Most people now relate the name Circe to the indomitable character in Game of Thrones, but few know that the name was first attributed to the first famous witch in history, legend, and mythology. The daughter of the god Helios and a nymph, Circe is sometimes thought to be also the goddess of witches, Hecate, as her knowledge and powers as a witch were extensive and feared, particularly her ability to transform men into animals, an ability attributed to her in all the great mythological narratives, including the Odyssey, Argonautica, Metamorphosis, Theogony, which dates to about 700 BC, and of which sadly no copies have survived. Certainly, if Circe was not Hecate herself, she was a worshipper of Hecate and a high priestess. It's believed that she arrived at the island of Aia by Helios's chariot, though there is no explanation as to why she was there and why she decided to stay and to become one of the many challengers of the Odyssey before Ulysses could return home. Suffice to say, we first see her in the story of the Argonauts, where Jason and Medea are on the run, having murdered Medea's brother and angering Zeus. They arrive at the island to find Circe bathing in salt water and surrounded by unnatural beasts. Circe invites them to her mansion, at which point Jason and Medea show her the still bloody knife, and Circe immediately realizes that they're here to be cleansed of their crime. She arranges a lavish ceremony in honor of Zeus to appease him with a sacrifice of a pig and covers Jason and Medea in the blood of the pig. When the ceremony is over, Medea tells Circe everything that's happened, sidestepping the detail about her brother, of course, but Circe understands the situation and isn't entirely happy with it. So as their family, Medea is Circe's niece through King Aeetes, she promises not to get in their way, but they must leave the island forthwith. Another mythological story sees a sea god, Glaucus, in love with Scylla. He goes to Circe to ask for a love potion so that Scylla would fall in love with him. But Circe falls in love with Glaucus herself, but he rejects her, so in revenge she poisons the water Scylla bathes in, turning her into a monster, which would later be seen in the Odyssey. Circe doesn't appear to be very successful in love, as another story recounts her falling in love with a king on the Italian mainland by the name of Picus. Again, Circe is rejected in favour of another woman, but this time she turns Picus into a woodpecker. Another story before Ulysses arrives is one where the giant is killed by Helios on the island, and from the blood of the giant came a new herb called moly, where the flower was so rare that it could never be picked by a human. It seems it's only the purview of gods to find the herb and pluck it, as we are told by Hermes, who meets Ulysses when he's making his way to Circe's mansion to find half his crew that she'd previously turned pigs when they went there to investigate if it was a friendly place, as they were all hungry and needed food. Clearly not a friendly place. Hermes warned Ulysses that Circe turned men into animals that most represented their nature, and that he would need help if he was to defeat her. He gave the precious white moly flower to Ulysses, explaining that he had to smell the flower often to overcome her smells. Her smells? Her spells. But yes, maybe she did smell too, I don't know. When Circe tried her magic on him, sure enough it didn't work, and so she was defeated, and in return for her life she returned the pigs back to their manly visage and invited Ulysses and all his crew to stay and eat and drink as much as they wanted until ready to leave. They stayed for about a year, and it's rumoured Ulysses had an affair with her, and she popped out 3 kids. Suffice to say, eventually he dragged himself away from her, but she warned him that he would have to visit Hades before he would be able to return home, and gave him the advice he needed to achieve this successfully. Later on, Ulysses was to be killed by one of his sons by her, and in compensation to Penelope, his wife, she was turned into a goddess, and her son with Ulysses was turned into a god, and Circe's son by Ulysses was also turned into a god. And to make it more confusing, Circe then marries Ulysses' son with Penelope, and his son with Circe then marries Penelope on Athena's advice, though this is never actually explained why she advised this, but it's very confusing. But there we go. There's no further story about this, just that, there was all this marrying going on, matchmaking going on. Anyway, Circe was to appear in various stage versions of the Odyssey at the turn of the millennia, and I think most interestingly perhaps being the one by Plutarch in the 1st century, where he picked up on the theme of men turned into pigs, and he writes an essay where Ulysses has a dialogue with one of the pigs, who prefers his pig form to his human form. And in this philosophical debate, they question everything, and the pig proves that animals are indeed more superior to humans in their wisdom and their virtue. While Circe has remained a figure of inspiration for art, literature, dance, and poetry all the way up to present day, there doesn't appear to be an ending for her, adding further weight to the idea that she may have been the goddess Hecate, whose own mythology can't place her directly into any origin story in any pantheon, and yet she seems to have popped up in most pantheons around the Mediterranean at some point or another. What do you think happened to Circe? Is she a Hecate, or is it a case that her ending hasn't been written yet? Please leave your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for watching this video. If you have enjoyed it, please like it, and if you would like to see more, please subscribe.